Welcome to Bleav in Bengals podcast presented by FanDuel. We're coming to you after the Cincinnati Bengals won in a Thursday night shootout. It was the ICY HOT Bowl between the 40-year-old quarterbacks, that is Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco. And what a game from Joe Flacco. He was simply incredible. 31 of 47, 342 yards. And scored a season-high 33 points after leading the Cincinnati Bengals offense to 470 yards of total offense in this game. Joe Flacco was simply phenomenal. He was sacked in this game only twice. Think about how much better Joe Flacco has made the offensive line. Think about how much better he has made the Cincinnati Bengals running game. The Bengals came into week 7 in the Thursday night contest against the Pittsburgh Steelers, averaging a league low 57 rushing yards per game. All they did was take on a Pittsburgh Steelers defense and ran to the tune of 142 yards, averaging 6.2 yards per carry. And Chase Brown had a season high 108 yards rushing, his first 100 yards rushing performance of the season, only because Joe Flacco, he was so good in this game last night. Do you know he had an average time to throw of 2.3 seconds every time he dropped back? It is by far the best average time to throw. He's getting rid of the ball faster than any other quarterback through week 6 and, of course, week 7. Since he's joined the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason why I bring that up is because that's how he's made the offensive line better. He's not taking sacks. He's not holding on to the football. He's getting the ball out. And oh, by the way, he's not throwing the ball to the other team. How about that for a genuine thought? 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the 2 games that he's been the starter for the Cincinnati Bengals. And look, I think Joe Flacco knows that this is all about him just making good reads, being very fundamental with the football, and then just leaning into maybe a pair of wide receivers that he's never in his 18-year career ever had a receiving tandem like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The numbers are staggering. Jamar Chase set a franchise record. He was targeted 23 times in this game. He caught a franchise record for a single game, 16 receptions against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then 161 yards receiving. T. Higgins was phenomenal. How about the 28-yard catch and slide at the 7-yard line without going in to score, making sure that they didn't give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers with time enough on the clock for them to go down and score, setting up Evan McPherson to finally kick the game-winning field goal with 11 seconds left in the game. It was as big as any play made in the game. T. Higgins has a tremendously high football IQ to go along with superb talent that he possessed alongside of Jamar Chase. I wouldn't take another receiver in the National Football League over Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And by the way, Andre Iosivas is making plays with Joe Flacco in the game. Joe Flacco has to be pinching himself this morning. He's never in his 18-year career played with wide receivers like this. I mean, this was a phenomenal game. And oh, by the way, Noah Fant, where did you come from, my friend? You know, Mike Gesicki goes down. He's going to be on IR for a few weeks. Noah Fant, all he does is has 4 catches for 44 yards, and he has a touchdown in the end zone, right? So all 3 of Joe Flacco's touchdowns go to a different player, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Noah Fant. By the way, I do believe that Mike Tomlin is very prescient. This guy might be able to see into the future because I think he knew it even before us Bengals fans knew it. I think he knew what we had in Joe Flacco, certainly before I did. He certainly knew more about Joe Flacco than many of the Bengals fans I'm reading about in these chats. This guy, Mike Tomlin, knew that Joe Flacco was good enough to play at a superbly high level, given the wide receiving core that the Cincinnati Bengals have. That's why he said about Andrew Berry, and we're going to talk about him a little bit, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. He said, either he knows more than we do or more than I do, because you do not trade a quarterback like Joe Flacco inside of the division and give him to a team that you hate, a team you don't like, and a team that you have to play against again during the upcoming season. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to play the Cleveland Browns week 18 in the final regular season game. And at that point, Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, may say, Mike Tomlin was right. What did we do here? In fact, he might be saying that right now after watching Joe Flacco throw for 342 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense that's known to get after the quarterback. Pittsburgh Steelers are coming in here with 17 sacks over their last 3 ball games. And they only had 2 on Flacco. But the reason why Joe was so good, quick reads, quick release of getting the ball out quickly, knowing where to go with the ball. We weren't getting that from Jake Browning. I'm sorry. So look, I owe Mike Brown, Katie and Troy Blackburn, and Zach Taylor an apology. You knew better than I what you were doing. You saw what Jake Browning was doing and said, we got to do better than this. And I think you owed it to the rest of the guys in the locker room to do what you did. I wasn't convinced that this Joe Flacco was going to show up. Mike Tomlin was. He was alert. He was severely bothered by the fact that the Cleveland Browns would trade Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. And how many of you, Bengals Nation, would ever have thought that in our most desired, distressed time as a franchise, that the Cleveland Browns would show up to help us out? The organization that fired the late, great Paul Brown, send him into exile. By the way, 2 things happened during that exile. Paul Brown not only got a call from the NFL saying, we'll give you a team to put in Cincinnati if you want. How about that? Come up with the money. We'll give you a team in Cincinnati. So without that firing, we don't get the Cincinnati Bengals in 1968. Another thing happened during that exile. Paul Brown, like Napoleon, was exiled to the island of Elba. He was exiled to La Jolla, California, and San Diego. And you know who he sat with? You know who he spent time with? The late, great Sid Gilman, someone I know very well because I grew up in Southern California. I attended the Sid Gilman football camp, got to know him. It was he who allowed me to get a scholarship at the University of Colorado because he knew another pro coach by the name of Chuck Fairbanks who recruited me to come to the University of Colorado. But I digress. It was Sid Gilman who during those days introduced Paul Brown to one of the great coaches that would come in the National Football League, and his name was Bill Walsh. That's right. Bill Walsh came to Paul Brown through a meeting during his exile with the late, great Sid Gilman, the father of the modern-day passing game, by the way. And it was Bill Walsh who brought in the West Coast offense that's still in operation today. Just giving you a little history, Cincinnati Bengals fans. But at the end of the day, the Cleveland Browns haven't done us a favor since those days. And they give us Joe Flacco for a 5th round pick? They might be calling the Bengals right now saying, we want more. Right? That would be like severe horse trading. You can't get more after the deal is done. Turns out to be a real good trade. Joe Flacco has done a wonderful thing for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's infused us with hope. Today, I am more hopeful for this franchise since I was on that fateful day against the Jacksonville Jaguars when I saw Joe Burrow go down. I got to tell you, Cincinnati Bengals fan, I've been a little depressed. I've been in a slump since then. But it came back in a Thursday night game where I saw Joe Flacco go right down the field to set us up for the game-winning field goal. And how about Evan McPherson, everyone? 4 for 4, banging through not only the 36-yard game winner, but he also made a 49-yarder, a 23-yarder, and a 45-yarder. Cincinnati Bengals defense was phenomenal. Got to give a shout-out to DJ Turner. The boy's balling. He's got a new attitude, new swagger. What's gotten into him? Eric Thomas, for crying out loud? Lamar Parrish? Lewis Breeden, for crying out loud, is being reincarnated. And DJ Turner came up with his second interception of the season, a biggie, when he took the ball away from DK Metcalf like a thief in the night. We had things happening for this football team that haven't happened around here for a while. Also, Jordan Battle's my man. That dude's got a nose for the football, showing why he's a keeper every day of the week. Coming up with yet another big-time play for Al Golden's defense. So, look, the defense made plays in that first half. I thought in the second half we allowed the Pittsburgh Steelers to score on 3 of their 5 second-half drives. They scored 3 touchdowns in the second half, 21 points to make this thing closer than maybe it should have been. But at the end of the day, we got that stop on the final drive, throwing up the Hail Mary. DJ Ivy bats the ball down. Every single play counts in this league. There is no doubt about it. Hey, look, by the way, I got to let you know, take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now, on a special discount for our listeners, all you do is you get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to join deleteme.com/pro using the promo code PRO. That's PRO at checkout. It's the only way you get 20% off. And of course, you go to join deleteme.com/pro and enter the promo code PRO at checkout. That's join deleteme.com/PRO. That's the promo code. So we come back to the Bleav in Bengals podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots. Cincinnati Bengals come away a winner in the Thursday night game, 31-33. They score a league-high 33 points. Cincinnati Bengals are now, 3-4? Just one game below 500. They're coming. They're coming. That's right. And I love the way that Joe Flacco leveraged the talents of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the best wide receiver tandem in the National Football League. T. Higgins, 6 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. He could have went over 100 yards receiving. He could have had 2 touchdowns in this game, but he wasn't selfish. He slid. Instead of running into the end zone to pad the stats, right? He took a slide at the 7-yard line and forsake getting his second touchdown. Gave up getting 100 yards receiving in the game so that we could have more snaps and eat more time off the clock. He was playing complimentary football. He was helping the defense, right? And only gave the ball back to the Pittsburgh Steelers after we kicked the 36-yard field goal and had only 11 seconds left on the clock. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. You know, another guy who was phenomenal, and I'm really happy for him because it was a stat that was given at the top of the show before the Cincinnati Bengals started this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday night. Chase Brown had been hit behind the line of scrimmage on 58% of his carries during the previous 5 games. Can you imagine being a running back and you can't even get you to the second level of the defense? How is he going to use that speed and quickness that he's known for? Guy's pretty tough too. But he was hit behind the line of scrimmage on 58% of his carries before last night's game. Well, last night, this offensive line, they look totally different. This is what happens when you let the offensive line eat in the run game. Bengals ran the ball 23 times. They had a rushing average of 6.2 yards per run play. They were averaging 2.9 yards per run play entering the Thursday night game, and then went to a whole nother level. When you have a quarterback that's getting the ball out of his hands, moving the chains, keeping the offense in rhythm, and then you pound and hit him in the mouth with a run play, hit him again. Oh, by the way, we put the quarterback under center. I've been telling you this for years now. Quarterbacks under center impact the run game exponentially. because the defensive line just can't be hard charging to get up the field and rush the quarterback in shotgun. That if you put the quarterback under center, if the subterfuge of camouflaging or hiding the run game is more apparent. In other words, it's less obvious that you're throwing the football, that you're running it when you're operating under center. The ball fakes, the ball handling for the quarterback forces that defense to slow down and read it out. And now, next thing you know, the offensive line, bam, firing off, hitting you in the mouth. Next thing you know, trap block or the down block by the guard and tackle or the pulling guard coming around. He's able to do that while the defense is reading and trying to see what's going on. It's advantage offense when you put your quarterback under center. So, Zach Taylor, you deserve a lot of credit for listening to me right here on the Bleav in Bengals podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. I love Zach Taylor. I thought Zach put together a heck of a game plan for Joe Flacco, and I thought Joe Flacco executed that game plan to perfection last night, getting the ball intentionally to Jamar Chase, not unapologetically, just intentionally. We're going to feed him the football more so than any other Bengals player in franchise history in a single game. He was targeted 23 times in this game. That's right, a franchise record. He caught a franchise record 16 passes in this game. No other Bengals player has ever caught more balls, I should say, in a single game than what we saw Jamar Chase do on Thursday night. And that was intentional. And you have to do that. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. So this Bengals offense was clicking because Joe Flacco had an average time to throw of 2.3 seconds. He got the ball out. I would imagine that Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims and Ted Karras are feeling pretty good about themselves today. They were like, I knew we could play. I knew we were good players. I knew we were not bad offensive line. I would imagine Scott Peters, the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line coach, is saying, see, quarterback get rid of the ball, you become a better offensive line. Quarterback knows what to do with the ball. Offensive line actually can protect for 2.5 seconds because the ball's got to come out under 3 seconds in the NFL. You get caught holding it longer than that, you're going down and you're going down hard. Since Joe Flacco has become the starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals in their 2 games, no quarterback has gotten the ball out faster than his average time to throw of 2.3 seconds. No other quarterback. So he's made the O-line better, and that's why he's only been sacked 3 times in their 2 games. Oh, by the way, Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Flacco at quarterback, they have a 52.6% scoring drive percentage. That's right. They've scored on 10 of their 19 offensive possessions in the 2 games with Joe Flacco running the starting quarterback position. They scored on 7 of 9 drives against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ate their lunch. And remember we talked about Mike Tomlin having nightmares about Joe Flacco? Think about this. Joe Flacco now, that was his 13th win against the Pittsburgh Steelers when coached by Mike Tomlin. That's the most win by any quarterback against a Pittsburgh Steelers team since 1950. That's what Mike Tomlin was having nightmares over. That's why he was so upset with the Cleveland Browns trading Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. He was like, this is the last guy I want to see. He's now played for 3 teams in the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, and now the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Tomlin had a better inclination for what the 18-year veteran, 40-year-old quarterback Joe Flacco was capable of, maybe more than us. Maybe more than us Cincinnati Bengals fans. I don't know if he saw 342 coming, but when his cornerbacks, Jalen Ramsey couldn't cover Jamar Chase, when his other cornerback, Darius Slay couldn't cover T. Higgins, when Joey Porter Jr. couldn't cover Andre Yosivas, when they couldn't stop Noah Fant over the middle of the field, the camera took a look at Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, their defensive coordinator. You could see the look on their face. They were like, this is how good this team is when they have a capable and competent player at the quarterback position. They knew it. They may have known it better than many Bengals fans, what was coming. I just didn't see Joe Flacco turning back the clock. I used to call a lot of Ravens games when I was with CBS Sports. And Joe Flacco led that team to a Super Bowl win. In fact, I was there that night at the New Orleans Superdome the night the lights went out when they beat the San Francisco 49ers. And Joe Flacco looked as good in this game on Thursday night as he did that night against the San Francisco 49ers. He turned back the clock. And that's what can happen when you have wide receivers like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Yoshivash. Give a lot of credit to Noah Fant and Chase Brown catching the ball coming out of the backfield. Cincinnati Bengals are phenomenal. And I got to say this. It's a team that now ought to catch fire. If you take a look at their next 4 games, guess who we got coming in here week 8? The New York Jets. They haven't won a game yet, by the way. That's right. They're 0-6. And this week, they're going to be playing at home. We'll see how they fare. Then week 9, they got the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears is a good football team. They're giving up 6.8 yards per play on defense. So Joe Flacco ought to have another good game. Week 10 is a bye week. So they get the rest up before, guess what? They play the Pittsburgh Steelers again, week 11, this time in Pittsburgh. So let's see if we can still take advantage of the secondary, see if we can still protect our quarterback. Let's see if we can still run the football. And then week 12, that 4th game coming up, a home game against New England, who, by the way, their second-year quarterback, Drake May, is playing lights out. Mike Vrabel's the new head coach in New England. You may have heard of it. They're in first place in the AFC East. They got a really good football team, but we owe them one. I'm sorry. After what they did, after we lost to them week 1 to start the 2024 season, we ought to have this game in red letters. We ought to be ready to beat the New England Patriots coming in here. We owe them, Cincinnati Bengals fans. And somebody ought to remind Joe Flacco what happened last year. That game was lost with Joe Burrow at quarterback. But it wasn't Joe Burrow's fault. We played horribly on defense. We could not make plays going into the end zone. Remember Tanner Hudson fumbling the ball as he was going into the end zone there? That was very costly. But look, that was another day. The Cincinnati Bengals offense yesterday scored a season high in the Thursday night game, 33 points. They had a season high 470 yards of total offense. They were clicking. Joe Flacco, 340-plus passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. In fact, he has 0 interceptions in the 2 games since starting for the Cincinnati Bengals. 5 touchdowns in those 2 games. Playing against 2 really good defenses in the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He puts it in to the Cincinnati Bengals 4-game losing streak. The Bengals, that's right, avoided a 5-game losing streak. It would have been a sad day to wake up Friday morning and the Bengals have lost 5 in a row, including a Thursday night game at home against a divisional opponent in the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that's not the case because Joe Flacco did show up in the Icy Bowl game where he beat Aaron Rodgers, who had 4 touchdown passes in this game. All 4 touchdown passes went to 3 tight ends. Pat Freiermuth had 2 touchdowns. Jonnu Smith had 1. And you see Darnell Washington? This guy looks like an offensive tackle. Biggest tight end I've ever seen in my life. He scored a touchdown, had 2 catches for 2 yards, 3 catches for 2 yards and a touchdown. But Joe Flacco, again, playing wonderfully, has the Cincinnati Bengals offense looking like they can win games. Cincinnati Bengals fans, enjoy your weekend and enjoy the week and the days to come as we get ready for our Week 8 game against the New York Football Jets. I am one Bengals fan that is very happy today after what Joe Flacco did. He's resurrected our Cincinnati Bengals team. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots. This is the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. Thank you for joining us, everyone.